Hello and welcome back to In the Kitchen with Matt. I am your host, Matt Taylor. Today I have my friend Justin with me and we're going to show you how to make sous vide steak. Justin, why don't you talk about sous vide for those who don't know what it is?
All right, so sous vide is French for under vacuum, and it is a process of cooking our meat in vacuum sealed bags that allow us to cook our meat to the perfect temperature. And we can get the perfect doneness because the meat is cooked thoroughly throughout.
That's awesome. So I don't know how many of you have cooked steak and maybe the outside will get really done and the inside won't be. There's a lot of variety of ways to cook steak, and this way is like optimal cooking throughout the whole piece of steak. And Justin was telling me earlier that it's a good way to make a mediocre steak taste really good. And if you have a really good cut of steak like we do right now, we have a New York strip, it's going to taste out of this world. All right, without further ado, let's begin. Make sure to subscribe to my channel, hit that notification bell so you won't miss out on any of my new videos. All right, Justin, take a look at what we got here on the table. What are we going to use?
So we're going to be cooking some New York strips today, and we're going to be using two different types of bag to be able to compare these. The ones that I use normally are just going to be a freezer bag that you can get at pretty much any store. And then the other one that we're going to be using is one that was reviewed earlier on the channel that is a silicone reusable bag. Here is our sous vide unit itself. This is going to get inserted into a container and maintain the water at a particular temperature and stir the water around and make sure that we end up getting an even distribution of the temperatured water. And then here we'll have our seasoning. So we're going to be using
some onion powder, we got some Himalayan salt, we got some garlic powder, some black pepper, and some avocado oil, which we are going to use in a cast iron skillet. A couple different kinds. You can use a classic one like this, or you can use one like this with the edges, just totally up to you. And if you don't have a cast iron pan, you can use just a standard skillet when we get to the sear phase. All right, so what are we going to start with first?
So we're going to start off with some garlic powder.
So for that side, it's about a half of a teaspoon of garlic powder for both chunks of steak. This is about a pound of steak total, and we just cut it into 2 half-pound pieces.
Okay, and then next we'll do a little bit of our onion powder.
And it's roughly about the same amount.
And then we have some Himalayan pink sea salt that we'll grind up.
One thing about steak, even when I cook my steak on the grill or in just a skillet, not sous vide, is I use the same exact seasonings every time. You really don't need a bunch of fancy seasonings. Salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, boom.
Yep, so we'll add in a little bit of our pepper. And then we can do the same on the other side.
Yep. Okay, so we're not going to add butter or avocado oil right now, correct?
Correct. When we're cooking our things in an oil or in a butter, it's almost more like we're deep frying it, and we really don't want to do that. At this point, we're just trying to get our meat to be exactly the right temperature all the way through so that it's the perfect desired doneness.
Great, and then afterwards, once it's done with the sous vide, then in our skillet we can add the avocado oil or the butter, and that will add flavor on the outside and help get it that nice sear.
All right, so now with the bags, one trick that I've learned is that with the bag itself, if you flip the opening backward like that, you ensure that you don't get any of the seasoning or meat juices on the opening so that you can insert your meat very easily and not have anything on the actual opening itself. We can do the same thing with our silicone reusable container. And now we're ready to do our vacuum process. So to seal the bag, we got to get all the air out of this so that it makes sure that it's able to sink to the bottom of our container. So one way to do it is with a straw. You can use a regular straw, but I find that these metal straws work really well. And we're just going to close off the bag almost all the way with our straw just stuck in there. And we can get a nice vacuum seal, and now that'll sink to the bottom.
Nice. And then what else could you use instead of that, like an actual vacuum sealer?
Yeah, if we have an actual vacuum sealer, that would be perfect. But if we don't want to put the money in and invest in that, then this is a really great cheap alternative. All right, so we are going to be using this little igloo that I got for really cheap. There are a variety of different options that you can use for containers. Some of the ones that are specifically designed for sous vide can be really expensive, and there's not really any reason to have some special fancy container. I was able to pick up this for a really low price, and this has been working really great. It's nice and insulated and keeps the water warm. What we're going to be doing with this today is another sealing method is we're going to use the water pressure to be able to push in on the surroundings of this so that we can push all the air up and out and then slide our little sealing piece on top so that we have, so you can push it down and really try to squeeze all that air out so that this is all ready and good to go for our cooking. Here is our sous vide unit. So this is going to drop down into our water bath and just attach onto the side of whatever container you choose. And then once this is plugged in, and we can turn it on, and it will circulate the water inside the container and heat it to the appropriate temperature. Now for this, we're going to be heating our bath to 129 degrees Fahrenheit or 54 degrees Celsius. And that's going to be for a medium rare steak. If we wanted it more done, we could increase the temperature slightly, and we can put all of those numbers in the description down below.
And that's going to keep the water at a consistent temperature, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Now,
I find that this is something where we don't have to be as perfect with our times as with other types of cooking. For a ribeye, we're going to be closer to around 2.5 hours for cooking. That's because the fat in the ribeye is going to be a lot softer, and the connective tissues in the meat will start coming apart very easily and very quickly if we cook it too long. A New York strip, since it has less of that fatty conductivity tissues, we're able to cook it a little bit longer. So we're going to be doing that one around about 3 hours to about 3.5 hours.
Awesome. Let's get on to that step.
So this is our first time trying out one of these silicone bags, and we can see that we're having to improvise a little bit with a clip here. As long as the meat is under the surface of the water, we're fine. You'll notice that the other bags that I've used more regularly, that's sunk all the way to the bottom, and it's going to be great the whole entire cook time. So now that this is all set up, it'll have the current temperature here, and then our desired temperature there, and we hit our on button, and then you can hear the water starts flowing. So now we're going to let this sit for about 3 or 3.5 hours. All right, so it's been about 3 hours now, and our meat is now cooked thoroughly. You'll notice that there's a bit of liquid that's collected. This is about a normal amount. Sometimes we'll end up having a little bit more than this, but this seems a bit average. And you'll notice that the meat looks kind of gross, right? Because we haven't really finished it off yet. But what we're going to do now is we're going to pull our meat out of our bag. And this is probably the most important step of everything is we're going to go through and we're going to thoroughly dry the exterior of our meat to get us ready for the next step. So with some paper towels, we can end up pulling out as much of that moisture as we can. And then once we've dried these out, we're going to take these steaks and put them in the refrigerator for about 10 minutes. That way the exterior can get really cold and be prepared and ready for the searing process, which we'll do next.
All right, so we have this cast iron skillet set to medium-high heat. Put in, it looks like about 2 tablespoons of avocado oil. And while our steak is resting in the fridge. We're gonna heat this skillet up really nice and hot.
So at this point, we are going to add our steaks to our pan here to do our sear. The main reason we want to remove the water from the steak prior to doing the sear is we want all the heat energy from the plate or from the pan to go into the food right away and not go into actually heating up the water and causing it to evaporate. So this way we'll have a really, really, really great sear on our steak. As you can see, it really doesn't take very long on each side. And now kind of the weird color that we were having before starts to go away. I do try to push down on the steak to make sure that the edges and everything have an opportunity to come in contact with the pan itself. There we go. There's the caramelization we're looking for.
And then Justin, at what point do you want to add the butter?
So the butter is something that we want to add toward the end. If we get the butter too hot, it actually breaks the butter down and kind of ruins it for us.
It turns it all brown, right?
Yeah, so we're going to make sure that we add that as our last step. Before we do that, we want to stand our steaks up on the edge and get a little sear on our sides as well. And now we'll add in our butter.
And he's just adding about a tablespoon of butter across both pieces of steak.
And this is really going to add a great flavor to this.
Really nice flavor.
We'll get a quick sear of that, and then we're about done.
And we'll just remove it and put it back on our same plate and let it rest for a few minutes while we cook up our vegetables. Oh, steak. Yummy. And now we want to just cut into this steak and show you what it looks like on the inside. And look at that nice pink center. Awesome. Nice sear on the outside, and notice how there's a nice uniform pink all around it. And then you can set the temp higher on your sous vide machine, but if you want a medium rare like this, just go ahead and do it for about 3 hours at 130 Fahrenheit. And this first one I cut into was the one that was out of the silicone reusable storage bag that you can use for sous vide. That was our first time using it. Worked fantastic. And then this is the one out of Justin's Ziploc bag. And I would say that they're pretty much identical. Both did their job. Really nice pink center, uniform with a bit of sear on all around. Boom! A yummy steak sous vide style. All right, and that is how you make steak sous vide style. I want to thank my buddy Justin for being here and showing us how to do that. It's really easy to do.
If we can do it, you can do it.
I'm Matt Taylor. This has been another episode of In the Kitchen with Matt. Thank you for joining us. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or requests, put them down below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thumbs up. down in the corner, push it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos. Take care. Time for us to dive into this. Oh yeah. Time for some steak.
That's good.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh. Oh.
That's so good.
Ah.